Welcome to section 1.3. In this video, we're going to take a look at how to add and subtract fractions. So if fractions have a common denominator, what we do is we find the difference or sum of the numerators. So difference means subtraction, sum means addition, and we're called the numerator or numerators means the top part of the fraction. So what we're going to do is if they have common denominators, is add or subtract, depending on the operation you're given, the top part of the fraction. And then, if we can, we're going to have to simplify our answer. And that's it if they have a common denominator. And also, my apologies, recall common denominator is when the bottom part of the fraction is the same value. So for example, 1/3 plus 2/3 is a sum, addition, of two fractions that have a common denominator. Now, if we have two fractions that don't have a common denominator, for example, 2/5 plus 7/2, or 7/2, these 5 and 2 are not the same value, so they don't have common denominators. So in this case, what you're going to have to do is find the smallest number that both the denominators can divide evenly into. And then you're going to have to multiply the denominator and numerator as needed. We'll go through the steps and go through some examples with along with these steps, so these steps will make more sense. But for now, we're just walking through it. Add the numerators or subtract the numerators together. And then we're going to, if we need to, we can simplify our answer. So let's look into some example problems. So for example, number 1, we have -5/2 plus 3/2. Now our denominators, we have a 2 and a 2. So since the values are the same, all we need to do is add the numerators together. So we have -5 plus 3 all over 2. -5 plus 3 is -2. That's over 2. -2 divided by 2, well, that's just -1. And that's their final answer. Looking at example 2, our denominators are 2 and 4. So we no longer have a common denominator. So when you don't have a common denominator, there are two cases you're going to run into. Example number 2 is when you have case number 1. And that is when whatever happens to be the largest value in the denominators, for example, in this case, our largest value is 4. If you take that largest value and divide it by the smallest or the smaller value, 4 divided by 2, and you get a whole number, 4 divided by 2 is 2. Since we get a whole number, what we can do, or what this indicates to us, is that 4 is our common denominator, or least common denominator, because 2 goes into 4. But because our common denominator is going to be 4, we aren't going to do anything with this fraction here, because this fraction already has that common denominator. So what we're going to do is we're going to manipulate this first fraction here, so that way we're not actually changing the value of it, but we're getting the denominator to be equal to 4. So to do that, we're going to have to multiply this whole first fraction by 2. And that is because 2 times 2 will get you 4, and that's what we want. So let's write this out. So we're going to multiply this whole fraction by 2. So we're going to have 1 times 2 over 2 times 2, and then we're going to carry along that fraction 1/4. Now simplifying this first fraction out, 1 times 2 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. So we get 2 over 4 plus 1/4. Well, our denominators are the same now, so all we have to do is add the numerators together. 2 plus 1, well, that's 3. And then we keep our denominator the same, so we have 3/4 as our final answer. Now looking at problem number 3, we don't have common denominators, so we're going to have to figure that out. So let's see if case 1 applies. Remember, case 1 only applies when we get a whole number, when we take the larger value and divide it by the smaller one. Well, 5, our larger value, divided by 3, that's not a whole number. So when this happens, this will be case number 2. When this happens, you take the two numbers, you do 5 times 3, and that'll get you 15. So 15 is your common denominator. Now this will always hold true, but occasionally when you multiply the denominators together, when you have something like a case number 2, sometimes you can find a smaller number, but just because we're kind of getting back into the swing of things and how to add and subtract fractions, how to find common denominators, for now, let's worry about this. So we have 5 times 3, which is 15. So 15 is going to be your common denominator. So for this first fraction, our denominator is 5. So we have to think, how many times do we have to multiply 5 to get to 15? Well, let's multiply 5 3 times to get to 15, because 5 times 15. So we're going to multiply this entire fraction, this entire first fraction, by 3. So that way we can get that denominator 5 equal to 15, because that's what we want. Now looking at the second fraction, we have 7/3. So we have to ask ourselves the question, how many times do I need to multiply 3 to get to 15? Well, the answer is you need to multiply 3 5 times to get to 15. So we're going to multiply this whole fraction by 5. So writing this out, we get 4 times 3 over 5. Oops, not 5. Over 5 times 3, my apologies. Minus 7 times 5 over 3 times 5. Now I'm writing out everything that we're doing so no one gets lost. So it might look like a lot, but I'm writing out everything that you need to do. So 4 times 3, well, that's 12. 5 times 3 is 15. We're going to subtract 7 times 5, which is 35, over 3 times 5, which is 15. Great. Now we have common denominators. So all we need to do is subtract the numerators, the top numbers. So we have 12 minus 35. And 12 minus 35, hold on here 1 second. I had a typo. Yeah, 12 minus 35 is negative 23 over 15. And that's your final answer. And don't forget that negative here because we are subtracting these fractions. So for example, number 4, we have negative 9/4. I encourage you to actually pause the video and try this one on your own. We have 3 more examples for this set of notes or this section. And for rest of these 3 examples, before I do these problems, I encourage you to pause the video and try to work through them on your own. So that way you can resume the video and go back and check your answers. And if you did something wrong, most likely this video will help clear it up. And then you can reflect and you can learn from it. So I really encourage you to pause the video and try the last 3 examples on your own, given the first 3 examples we've done. And assuming you have given it a try on your own, let's work through it. So for example, number 4, I can see that we have common denominators because 4 and 4, they're the same values. So all we need to do in this case is because we're subtracting a negative, recall when you subtract a negative, that changes to addition. So we get negative 9 over 4 plus 6 over 4. And now all we need to do is add the numerators together. But the one thing to be careful here is that we have this negative here. So what this means, or what this indicates, is that we actually have negative 9 plus 6 over 4. So that's one thing to be careful of. Because this fraction is negative, we need to carry along that negative value to that 9. So we have negative 9 plus 6. Negative 9 plus 6 is negative 3. We're going to put that over 4. And that's your final answer. Now looking at example number 5, we have a mixed number here. So whenever you're given a mixed number, we need to convert it into an improper fraction first. So recall we take what's in the denominator, multiply it by 2, and then add that by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 plus 2 is 8. And we're going to put that over 3, and then we're going to add 2/4. Now we don't have common denominators, so you have to ask yourselves, is this larger value 4 divisible by 3? And it's not, right? Because 4 divided by 3 doesn't get you a whole number. So what this means is that we're going to have to do case number 2, which is where we multiply the denominators together. So we get 3 times 4, which equals 12. So 12 is our common denominator. So let's ask ourselves, for this first fraction here, what do we need to multiply 3 by to get to 12? Well, we need to multiply 3 by 4 to get to 12. So we're going to multiply this first fraction by 4. And the second fraction has a common denominator of 4. So we're going to need to multiply it by 3 to get to 12. Or 4 to get to 12, our denominator. So we're going to have 4 times 8, which is 32. And then 4 times 3, well, that's 12. Plus 2 times 3 is 6. And 3 times 4 is 12. Now we have common denominators. So all we have to do is add the numerators together. So we have 32 plus 6 over 12. And 32 plus 6, well, that's just 38. And then we have that over 12. Now notice, this fraction isn't fully simplified, right? Because we have both even numbers, 38 and 12. So just by looking at this, because they're both even, we can say automatically that they're both divisible by 2. Or we can divide 38 and 12 by 2 just by looking at it because they're both even. So 38 divided by 2 is 19. And then 12 divided by 2 is 6. Now that's our final answer because 19 is what is called a prime number. So recall a prime number is anything that can only be divisible by itself. So in this case, 19 is only divisible by 19 and 1. So because of that, this fraction is simplified. Now, looking at example number 6, if you haven't tried this problem on your own, I encourage you to try this last example problem before we end this section of the notes. Now, assuming you have worked through it, let's go through it together. So, looking at our largest value, we have a 10, and our smaller value is 5. Is 5 divisible by 10? It is. So we have case number 1 in this case. So 10 divided by 5 equals 2. So this means that our common denominator is whatever our largest value is, and that's 10. So for our first fraction, because we know our common denominator is going to be 10, we have to ask ourselves, how many times do we need to multiply 5 by to get to 10? Well, that answer is 2. So we need to multiply this whole fraction by 2. So we get 2 times 4, which is 8, and 2 times 5, which is 10. And then we're just going to carry along the second fraction, minus 7/10. And now because we have common denominators, all we need to do is subtract the numerators. 8 minus 7 is 1, and we're going to put that over 10, and that can't be simplified, so that's your final answer.